This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Queenpin 2.0, Part 7. When we left off, the Queen Mother had questioned Tru and Selima about Rennie's involvement in the plan and with her son. Tru couldn't tell the Queen Mother everything that transpired between Rennie and Donovan because she wasn't present for every interaction that they had with one another. All she could tell her was what Rennie told her. So the Queen Mother had no idea what all transpired between Rennie and Donovan from the time that he declared her his woman in front of Maribel just to piss her off in the meeting at the round table. But y'all know Rennie told me all about it, so I can tell y'all. So what had happened was, after the funeral and Maribel leaving Donovan's house, letting them both know that she was done for real, Rennie said, "Now, Donovan, why would you play games with that woman like that? You know you love her." Donovan said, "We ain't even get going good, and she proved that she was disloyal." Rennie asked, "Disloyal how, Donovan? And how does lying and saying that you and I are involved make any of this better? Why you don't know how to end one thing without starting up another, or pretending to start up another?" Donovan said, "Oh, look at you being the voice of reason. That little international stay at a psych facility against your will did you some good, huh?" Rennie said, "It did. You might need to go there." Donovan said, "Yeah, I definitely need to get some therapy and some medication in me, but right now I'm focused and I'm not letting up on this situation." Rennie said, "What situation?" And then Donovan filled Rennie in on his belief that Angela knew what Veronica was planning, and that Veronica had told Angela where she was going to take the children, that Bernie was in on it all along, that Bernie wanted the Queen Mother, that she was jealous of their family, and that she was in cahoots with Jira, that Angela was protecting Bernie, and that she had Q under some kind of spell, and Maribel was protecting and defending her cousin Angela. And his crazy mind told him that all of them was involved in the plot against the Queen Mother, and as a result, they were all responsible for Pops Andy's death. When he said, "And they all gonna pay for it, every last one of them." Rennie said, "You gonna kill your brother, his wife, and Maribel? And then what you gonna do, Donovan? You gonna have to hide out. You gonna have to be on the run for the rest of your life. Because if the police don't get you, the families will." Donovan said, "What you know about the families?" Rennie said, "Oh, Tru and Selima brought me up to speed on that flight from Venezuela." Donovan said, "And you in?" Rennie said, "I'm in. But I will not be involved in you doing any jacked up mess to your family or Maribel. That woman's been holding you down and taking care of your family while you've been running around causing a damn ruckus. She helped take care of your children so that your family could be by your father's side and kept your family fed so that they wouldn't get sick themselves. You may have good reasons for why you stayed in the DR, but in the end, they're all just excuses. You made up your mind about Q and Angela, Bernie, and even Maribel, and you stayed away and let the story you were telling yourself fester. Believe me, I know about telling yourself stories and not checking the Carfax." Donovan said, "Look at little Rennie all grown up." Rennie said, "Don't start deflecting." Donovan said, "I'm not. You right about a lot of it, but I don't agree with you on a whole lot." Rennie said, "You ain't got to agree with me, but if we gonna work together, then I need to know that you're not out here doing something stupid to try to hurt the people who love you. Because I can't be involved in that. We gonna do some dangerous stuff and hurt some people. But it gotta all line up and they gotta deserve it." Donovan said, "Okay. But see, here's the thing. I always had a thing for you, Rennie. But the stars just didn't line up. Either you was with somebody or going crazy over somebody. Or I was with somebody or going crazy over somebody. But now, we both single. And we both here." Rennie said, "And this is probably not the time for you to get involved with anybody, let alone me. I'm not on that. I'm not interested in getting involved with anybody who got residuals with somebody else. You're going to get all caught up with me, then you're going to get your head on straight, and then you're going to want Maribel back." Donovan said, "Rennie, you've been knowing me for as long as our brothers have been best friends. We ain't never been like sister and brother or nothing, but I've always had your back, and you've always had mine. And you claim that you was never really in the queue. You was just tripping because of the trauma and your mental health. And we have that in common. We both crazy than a mug. I say at the very least we could give it a go at scratching one another's itches. What could go wrong?" Rennie shut Donovan down. And as she went to leave, Donovan said, all right. but I do need a friend right now, Rennie. In a couple of days, I'm flying to Trinidad to put my father in the ground. Rennie said, I'll stay and we can kick it, but just as friends. The following day, Selima, Rennie, and Tru met up at the hotel. Selima said, so we need to fly to Trinidad. I need to help the team set up a perimeter, organize and put shooters in place to make sure that everybody stays safe at Uncle Andy's funeral. But I also need to do some surveillance. I plan to run the Baptiste family, and I need to know everything. Who's who, what organization they with, if they an ally or a foe. And I also need to lay eyes on Jose. If he doesn't have my Aunt Jira, he knows where she is. And since my pops is not pressed to find her right now, I'm gonna have to see if I can get my Uncle Manny in this. The three women headed to Trinidad, and we already know what transpired at the funeral and shortly thereafter. And when they flew back to the States, Selima went to the firm to pick up some quick supplies. She couldn't wait for the packages that contained additional surveillance equipment, bugs, and the like to be delivered to her in Venezuela. She was surprised when she got there and saw that Q was there. Since the twins were born, he'd been spending all of his time at the hospital with Angela, planning the memorial service for Pops Andy, and ensuring that his children, mother, and sister had the support that they needed. Q, LJ, Woody, and Wise were in a closed-door meeting. And as usual, Selima just bust right on in. She said, what up, niggas? LJ, you got that package for me? LJ chuckled and said, what up, Selima? Yeah, I got it. Let's go in my office. And before they could walk out, Wise said, damn, if you ain't a tall drink of water. Selima looked at Q and said, who this nigga? Q said, Wise, this is my cousin, Selima. Selima, this is Wise. Selima, never having been accused of being shy and never being one to hold her tongue, looked at Wise, looked at Q and said, okay, his name is Wise, but who is he? Because he looked like he just got out of the slammer. Q chuckled and said, well, he didn't just get out, but Wise stood up and said, yeah, I did time. A man tried to turn my sister into a punching bag, so I punched his lights out. Selima said, oh, okay. So you a stand-up guy, huh? She looked at Q and said, so what he doing? Q said, he and Woody are doing some of the PI work that my PIs can't do. Selima said, oh, you are under the radar off the books employee. Got it. Then she looked at Woody and asked, you plan on introducing him to my pops? You know we can use more stand-up shooters. Wood said, nah, we talked about it briefly, but that's not where his mind is. He can absolutely put in work, but he's shown himself to be very useful at undercover operations and getting information out of people without busting his gun. Selima asked, but can he bust his gun? Big Wood said, of course. What the hell I'm gonna do with a nigga who can't bust his gun? Wise said, is this a job interview? Am I missing something? Selima said, it could be. Let me ask you something. How long was you down? When Wise said 15 years, Selima said, and how you got your nut? Wise said, damn, you don't pull no punches, do you? Selima said, nah, I don't have time for small talk. Life is short and I got ish to do. I see something I like, I check the Carfax. And if it all line up, I drive. Wise looked at Big Wood and said, I thought you said that the family was off limits. Woody said, you don't want to go there, man. Wise said, damn, for somebody who said that it's business and not personal, you done had too many of these broads. Selima said, oh, he ain't never have me. I had him, though. And you ain't answered the question. Is that because you was backdooring niggas? Wise said, hell nah. Then Selima asked, okay, and how big is your... And in unison, all the men was like, whoa, hold up, wait a minute. You going too far. Wait. Selima said, my bad. A woman needs to know these things. Wise said, how about we discuss this later on and you find out for yourself? Selima said, okay. And then she and LJ headed out the room. And Wise said, hold on, Slim. Selima turned around and said, don't call me that. That name is reserved. In memoriam. It's Selima. Or Deborah. Big Wood just chuckled, because he knew exactly what Selima was talking about. He was the only one who ever called her Slim. And Deborah was the code name that Tru gave her in the DR. Then she turned around and walked out the door. Wise said, I'ma holler at you later on, though. Selima said, if you as good as Big Wood said you are, you'll find me. That night, Selima and Tru were at the hotel bar. Rennie was MIA, because she was babysitting Donovan, keeping him from going postal on his family. He had a whole new reason to be pissed off with Q. The fact that Q didn't go to Trinidad for Pops Andy's funeral had him pissed. So Selima was pumping Tru for information about Wise, and Tru was telling her the little that she knew about him. When she told Selima that it was Wise who flipped India and got all the information that Q and LJ needed to interrupt the plan that JR had created to find and snatch the Queen Mother, Selima said, "Oh, he good with me. I just need to know he got a clean bill of health and he ain't gonna turn into no damn stalker." Tru said, well, 8 o'clock. And then Selima surreptitiously looked over her left shoulder, and coming towards them was Wise and Woody. They was sipping, but they was still on point. When the two men approached, Selima said, "So, did you find me, or did Woody tell you where to find me?" Wise said, "Nah, I followed the breadcrumbs. Once he told me you two were working together, and I saw him texting, and then he said he was going to drop me off at our hotel. I told him I was riding with him." Then Wise looked at Woody and said, "So, you still want to tell me that it's all business and not personal with you and Shorty?" Woody said, "I'm not telling you nothing. My business ain't your business." Then Big Wood walked over to Tru, whispered something in her ear, and the two of them walked out of the hotel bar. Selima said, "Good night." Selima and Wise sat at the bar until last call, chopping it up, getting to know one another. And then Wise said, "Your room or mine?" And Selima said, "Neither. When the last time you seen a doctor? Got your blood work done? Had a full STD and STI panel?" Wise said, "I'm clean." Selima said, "And so am I. But unless it's a part of the job, I ain't taking a nigga down unless I know what I'm working with. So holler at me when you got that information, and you can log into a my chart and show me what it is." Wise said, "Word? All right." And then Selima headed to her room. She had a flight to catch in a couple of hours to Venezuela. A few days later, after Donovan ran into Woody coming out of Tru's hotel room, he headed to Rennie's hotel room. When she opened the door and let him in, he said, "Listen, I know you've been running interference for my family and babysitting me to make sure that I ain't flip on nobody. And I appreciate that. But we about to head to Venezuela and pretend to be a couple. And I can pretend, and I'm pretty sure you can pretend too. But after this last week, I think it should be clear to both of us that we got a connection. It's deeper than us both having mental health issues. And it's way more meaningful than the fact that you've been associated with my family and I've been associated with yours. And no, I'm not looking for a wife or a long-term commitment right now. I got a lot of ish to work out. But I think we could be good for each other. And I'm not just looking for somebody to sleep with. I need to feel connected to somebody. Like there's somebody in this world that I can trust and depend on. Like there's a soft place for me to land. And not just a friend that I could kick it with, but a lover that I could share all and be me with. And I feel like you need that too. You told me yourself it's been a long time since you even had a man that was about you. So why we can't just..." And before Donovan finished his sentence, Rennie pounced. Donovan had said the magic words. He needed her, and he recognized that she needed somebody. And he wasn't just being reckless with his words so he could get what he wanted. He was being honest and upfront. And he was also being vulnerable. And after days and days of being in Donovan's company, many of which they were alone, Rennie was realizing that she'd always thought that Donovan was fine as hell and he could get it. But she thought he was out of her league. She thought that he wouldn't be interested in a woman like her. She'd only ever seen him with light-skinned, slim, older women. And she was dark-skinned, thick, and younger. And LJ had cautioned her to stay away from Donovan because he wasn't wrapped too tight. So she'd put the possibility out of her mind until then. So when she jumped into his arms and wrapped her legs around his waist, he caught everything she was throwing. With only a few hours before they had to head to the airport, Donovan and Rennie were acting like rabid dogs up in that hotel room. They both had a lot of pent-up tension that they needed to release, and they both had an animalistic way of releasing it. They were both shocked to discover that the other was a wild and rambunctious lover who was freaky, vocal, flexible, and full of passion. When Donovan bent Rennie's legs above her head and then wrapped his hands around her throat, he was shocked when she started throwing it back. Donovan hadn't met too many women who were in the BDSM. And all these years, there was Rennie right under his nose. They was in there pulling hair, choking, and slapping each other. He was beating it up and she was taking it. And they only stopped because they was cut short when Tru knocked on the door and said, "Y'all loud as hell in there. It's time to go."